Hello, legends! Back again with your daily book fix on your YouTube channel. We crack open one amazing book every single day so you can steal the best ideas, skip the 300 boring pages, and actually become more and more successful. Grab your coffee. Today's book is about to blow your mind.
It really is. Uh, Honestly, this is one of those rare finance books that I think absolutely everyone should read, regardless of how much money you actually have.
Right, because it isn't really about finance, is it? We are doing a deep dive into the psychology of money by Morgan Housel. And look, I'll be honest with you. Usually when we talk about money on this show, I am mentally bracing myself for a math lesson.
Oh, totally. You expect the charts.
Exactly. I'm expecting formulas, spreadsheets, stock tips, maybe some complex data analysis on interest rates that puts half the audience right to sleep.
Which is exactly how we're taught to think about money, right? I mean, we treat finance like it's physics.
Yeah.
We act like there are these hard, unbreakable laws like gravity, where if you do X, then Y simply must happen. It's seen as this hard science where you just plug in the numbers and get the result.
But Housel's whole premise, and really the main mission for this deep dive, is that that approach is completely backward.
Right. He argues that doing well with money actually has very little to do with how smart you are or how good you are at calculus. It has almost everything to do with how you behave.
It's a soft skill.
Exactly. It's psychology, it's emotion, it's nuance. You can be an absolute genius and lose everything. Or you could be just an ordinary person and build a fortune purely based on behavior.
Which is a massive relief for me, honestly, because my calculus grades in high school were absolutely tragic.
I think most of us can relate to that.
But to really prove this point that behavior beats intelligence, we have to start with the story that opens the book. The story of Ronald Reed.
Oh, this is one of my absolute favorite examples. It just breaks every single stereotype of what a rich person is supposed to look like.
It really does. So for you listening, let me just paint a quick picture of this guy. Ronald Reed. He was born in rural Vermont. He was actually the first person in his entire family to even graduate high school.
A very humble start.
And get this. He was so broke growing up that he actually hitchhiked to campus every single day.
Wow. And, you know, his career wasn't exactly flashy either.
Not even close. He wasn't some hotshot CEO. He wasn't a tech founder in a hoodie. He literally fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years and then swept floors at JCPenney for 17 years.
Just a regular guy working regular jobs.
Right. He lived in a tiny little house he bought for $12,000. His main hobby was chopping firewood. He wore flannel shirts.
The definition of a low-key life. If you passed him on the street, you wouldn't look twice. You'd just see a nice old guy in a flannel shirt.
Exactly. Then, in 2014, Ronald dies at the age of 92. And this is where your jaw just drops, because this humble janitor left a net worth of over $8 million.
$8 million.
Yeah.
From sweeping floors and pumping gas. It's incredible.
Right. He left $2 million to his stepkids and $6 million to his local library and hospital, and everyone who knew him was completely baffled.
You probably thought he was secretly a mob boss or something.
Or they assumed he must have won the lottery and just hid the ticket under his mattress. Or inherited some secret fortune from a distant uncle.
But he hadn't. There was no secret windfall.
No, none at all. He just saved what little he could, put it into blue chip stocks, and waited.
He just waited.
He waited for decades. He let those tiny savings compound into a fortune. He never panicked, and he didn't touch it.
But here is the really crucial part. What makes this story so powerful isn't just Ronald Reed's success in a vacuum. It's who Housel contrasts him with.
Yes, the executive.
Right, because at the exact same time Ronald Reed was making headlines for his secret millions, there was another man in the news named Richard Fuscone.
Okay, let's unpack this guy, because on paper, Fuscone is the polar opposite of Ronald.
He was everything you were supposed to be if you want to be rich. Harvard educated, MBA, an executive at Merrill Lynch.
A real Wall Street guy.
Very much so. He was so successful in the finance industry that he actually retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. He was on Crane's 40 Under 40 list. He had the pedigree, the intelligence, and the network.
He knew exactly how the math worked.
Better than anyone. But here is where the behavior gap comes in. He was greedy. In the mid-2000s, he borrowed heavily to expand an 18,000-square-foot home in Greenwich, Connecticut.
18,000 square feet.
We are talking 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 pools. It cost $90,000 a month just to maintain the house.
11 bathrooms. That's not a house. That's a luxury hotel. That is just wildly excessive.
And then the 2008 financial crisis hit. Because Fuscone was so highly leveraged, just so deep in debt with illiquid assets, everything turned to dust.
Oh, man.
He filed for bankruptcy. His massive mansion was foreclosed on and eventually sold for pennies on the dollar.
It's just such a stark image. You have Ronald, the janitor, dying with $8 million, and Richard, the Harvard genius, going totally broke.
And Housel makes this brilliant, brilliant point. In what other field is that even possible?
Right.
Think about it. Could a janitor perform a heart transplant better than a Harvard-trained surgeon?
No way. You'd be arrested for even trying.
Could a guy who sweeps floors design a skyscraper better than a trained architect?
Absolutely not. The building would immediately fall down.
But in finance, it happened. The janitor beat the genius. And that proves that finance isn't about IQ. It is about behavior. Ronald was patient. Richard was greedy.
That behavior gap completely eclipsed the education gap.
It did.
It really levels the playing field, doesn't it? But it's also kind of terrifying because it means our behavior is the bottleneck. It doesn't matter how many books you read if you can't control your impulses.
Precisely. And that brings us to two huge, often invisible forces that drive our financial lives. Housel calls them siblings: luck and risk.
I love this comparison. We usually attribute our success entirely to our own hard work and our failures to just bad luck. It's a total ego defense mechanism.
Entretent.
But Housel uses Bill Gates to show just how massive luck can be in the equation.
It's a staggering statistic. I mean, Bill Gates is obviously a genius and a relentless worker. No one disputes that. But he attended Lakeside School in Seattle.
Right.
And in 1968, Lakeside was one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer.
I actually tried to look this up beforehand because it sounds almost exaggerated, but the odds are genuinely insane.
Housel crunched the numbers. In 1968, there were roughly 303 million high school-age people in the world. Only about 300 of them went to Lakeside.
Wow.
The odds of a high school student being at a school with a computer in 1968 were roughly 1 in a million.
And Gates himself admits it, right?
He does. He openly says, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. He had a 1 in a million stroke of luck that gave him a huge head start on the rest of the planet.
So that's the luck side of the coin. But then you have the flip side, the risk. And Housel introduces us to a name I had honestly never heard before. Kent Evans?
Yeah, this is the part of the story that really gets you. Ken Evans was Bill Gates' best friend at Lakeside.
Oh.
By all accounts, he was just as smart as Gates, maybe even smarter. They shared the exact same dream of becoming tech tycoons. They were partners. They were supposed to change the world together.
So why have we never heard of him? Why isn't there a Microsoft and Evans Corporation?
Because before they could graduate, Kent Evans died in a mountaineering accident.
Man, that is just heavy.
And look at the math again. The odds of a high school student dying in a mountaineering accident are roughly, wait for it, 1 in a million.
Wow. So they both experienced a complete statistical anomaly.
Exactly. You have the exact same force probability working in opposite directions. Gates got the 1 in a million luck. Evans got the 1 in a million risk.
It really makes you rethink how we judge success and failure. We're so quick to say, oh, that guy's a genius, or that guy totally screwed up. But sometimes it's literally just the roll of the dice.
It is. And Housel's point isn't that hard work doesn't matter. It's that we need to be very careful about judging ourselves and others. If you fail, it might not be because you made a stupid decision. It might just be risk showing up. And if you succeed, be humble, because luck probably played a major role.
But while we can't control luck or risk, there is one thing we definitely can control, and that's the concept of enough.
This is arguably the hardest financial skill to master, the moving goalpost problem.
Yes. Housel tells the story of Rajat Gupta. This guy was the CEO of McKinsey. He was worth $100 million.
A staggering amount.
$100 million. That is, I never have to work again money. That is, my grandkids are set for life money.
You would certainly think so. But for Gupta, it wasn't enough. And this is the psychological trap. He moved in circles with billionaires, not millionaires. He looked around the room and actually felt poor.
Which is crazy to think about.
So he started insider trading. He was sitting on the board of Goldman Sachs, learned about a massive investment coming from Warren Buffett during the 2008 crisis, and immediately called a hedge fund manager to trade on that private info.
And he went to federal prison for it. He destroyed a stellar lifelong reputation and lost his freedom, all because $100 million simply wasn't enough.
Now compare that to the author Joseph Heller, the guy who wrote Catch-22.
Yes. I love this anecdote so much. It reads almost like a fable.
It does.
So Heller is at this lavish party in the Hamptons hosted by a billionaire hedge fund manager, And a friend nudges Heller and says, you know, this hedge fund manager made more money today than you have made from Catch-22 in your entire lifetime.
Which, given hedge fund salaries back then, was probably a true statement.
Right. And Heller just looks at him and says, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough.
It stops you right in your tracks, doesn't it?
It really does. It completely reframes the whole game we were all playing.
Housel's takeaway here is so critical. There is absolutely no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need.
That is profound.
Gupta risked his reputation and his freedom, things he desperately needed for more money, which he did not need.
But enough is tricky, right? Because it sounds a bit like settling. It sounds like you're telling people to just stop being ambitious.
It's not about stopping ambition at all. It's about knowing when the goalpost needs to stop moving so you don't run yourself off a cliff.
Right.
If your expectations constantly rise with your income, you will never be happy. You have to keep the goalposts fixed at a level where you can actually be content.
And if you can do that, if you can stop moving the goalposts, you give yourself the most powerful advantage in finance, time.
Okay, let's unpack this because we definitely need to talk about compounding. We all know the dictionary definition,
Yeah.
interest, earning interest, but Housel frames it in a way that actually makes it click. He uses ice ages.
This was such a weird detour in a finance book, but it totally worked.
It really did.
Yeah.
For a long time, scientists thought ice ages were caused by freezing severe winters, which makes sense intuitively, right? A super cold winter freezes the world. But it turns out they're actually caused by cool summers.
Wait, walk us through that. How does a cool summer freeze the planet?
Well, think about the snow. Even if the winter is just an average winter, if the summer isn't hot enough to melt all that snow, a little bit is left over.
Okay.
Then the next winter, fresh snow falls on top of that leftover base. This reflects more sunlight, keeping the ground even cooler, so even more snow stays the next summer.
Nice.
Layer by layer, year after year, over thousands of years, you get a continental ice sheet.
So it's not about a massive, dramatic blizzard. It's about the steady accumulation that just never melts.
Exactly. And that is Warren Buffett's career in a nutshell. Housel points out a stat that is just mind-bending. At the time the book was written, Buffett's net worth was about $84.5 billion.
A staggering amount of wealth.
But $81.5 billion of that came after his 65th birthday.
Whoa. I need you to say that again for everyone listening.
$81.5 billion of his $84.5 billion came after he qualified for Social Security.
That is just unbelievable.
It's just the math of compounding. If Buffett had started investing in his 20s and then retired at 60 like a normal person to go play golf, you would have never heard of him.
Really?
His net worth would have been roughly $11.9 million, which is great retirement, but it's not $84 billion. His secret weapon isn't just that he's a good investor. It's that he's been a good investor for over 80 years.
That is the cool summer. He never melted the snowball. He just kept it rolling and rolling.
Precisely. And this leads directly to a vital distinction: the difference between getting wealthy and staying wealthy. They are two completely different skills.
This is a crucial distinction. Getting wealthy requires optimism. It requires taking risks. You have to put yourself out there, start the business, buy the risky stock.
But staying wealthy, that requires paranoia. It requires a lot of humility. It requires a strict survival mindset, knowing that the world can take it all away at any moment. You have to survive long enough for that compounding to actually work. Because if you get wiped out, the clock resets to zero.
So the goal isn't to make the highest possible returns every single year. The goal is just to never get wiped out.
Exactly. If you survive the dips, you get to experience the tail events.
Let's talk about tails, because this is a statistical term, but in plain English, it essentially means outliers, right?
Right. In finance, you can actually be wrong half the time and still make an absolute fortune.
Which sounds so counterintuitive. We are taught in school that if you get 50% on a test, you fail.
But investing isn't a test. It's a portfolio. Look at Disney, for example. In the mid-1930s, Disney had produced more than 400 cartoons,
Okay.
and most of them lost money. The studio was really struggling. They were completely buried in debt.
I actually didn't know that. I always assumed Disney was just always a powerhouse from day one.
Not at all. They were on the brink of collapse. Then they released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That one single movie, that one tail event made $8 million in 1938.
Wow.
That one massive success paid for all the 400 failures, paid off all their debts, and basically built the studio as we know it.
One win erased 400 losses.
Same thing with Amazon. Do you remember the Fire phone?
Vaguely. It was an absolute flop.
It cost them millions and millions of dollars, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter because Amazon Web Services and Prime were such massive tail events that they covered the Fire Phone failure 1,000 times over.
So the real takeaway for you listening is don't beat yourself up if some of your investments tank or your ideas fail.
Correct. Don't judge your success by individual picks. Judge it by the whole portfolio over time. A few massive winners, if you hold on to them long enough, will pay for all the losers. You just have to stay in the game long enough to find them.
So if we do all this, if we survive, if we let our money compound, if we let the tails work, what is the actual point? What is the real goal of having money?
This is easily my favorite chapter. Housel argues that the highest dividend money pays is control over your time. Freedom. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want. Housel notes that having control over your time correlates to happiness way more than your salary or the size of your house.
But we often get this wrong, don't we? We think money is for buying stuff to show other people that we are successful. Which brings us to the man in the car paradox.
It's a classic scenario. You're walking down the street and you see a guy drive by in a bright red Ferrari. What is your very first thought?
I usually think, wow, look at that car. Or maybe, I wonder how much that cost.
But do you look at the driver and think, wow, that guy is so cool?
Honestly, no. I'm usually picturing myself in the car.
Exactly. You don't care about the driver at all. You're using his car to fantasize about people thinking you were cool.
Right.
And the paradox is that the driver bought the car because he thinks you were staring out of admiration for him. But you aren't. You're ignoring him.
So nobody is as impressed with your possessions as you are.
Spot on. They are just using your possessions to feed their own ego. If you genuinely want respect and admiration, you are far better off seeking it through kindness and humility than through horsepower.
This leads to another crucial definition difference that Housel makes. Rich versus wealthy. Because we definitely tend to use those words interchangeably.
We do, but they are actually opposites. Rich is current income. It's visible. It's the Ferrari, the Instagram vacation photos, the big house. You only know someone is rich because they are actively spending money.
But wealth.
Wealth is what you don't see. Wealth is income not spent. It's the money sitting in the bank that gives you options.
Yeah.
It's the savings that let you quit a boss you hate. It's the ability to handle a medical emergency without a panic attack. It is entirely invisible.
And that's exactly why it's so hard to imitate. We can all see Richard Fuscone's mansion. We couldn't see Ronald Reagan's index funds until he died.
That's the core problem. We learn by imitation, but we cannot imitate what we can't see. And Housel has this great line. He says, savings is just the gap between your ego and your income.
Ooh, that burns a little bit.
It's so true, though. To save more money, you don't necessarily need a higher income. You might just need a lower ego. You need to stop caring so much about what other people think of your car or your clothes.
So what does this all mean for our actual strategy? If we are trying to be wealthy and not just look rich, how should we approach our finances? Housel suggests we should aim to be reasonable rather than rational.
This is a nuance that spreadsheet people absolutely hate.
Oh, I bet.
A purely rational person makes decisions based entirely on the mathematical numbers. But a reasonable person makes decisions based on being a screwed-up, emotional human being who just wants to sleep well at night.
The perfect example he gives for this is paying off a mortgage.
Right. Let's do the pure math. If you have a mortgage at a 3% interest rate and the stock market returns 8% on average, the rational spreadsheet answer is never pay off the mortgage, invest every extra penny instead. You will end up with more money.
That is literally what every financial advisor will tell you to do. But if having that debt hanging over your head stresses you out, if it keeps you awake at night, worrying, then paying it off is the reasonable thing to do.
Because if you're stressed, you become emotionally vulnerable. If the market crashes and you have this huge mortgage hanging over you, you might panic and sell your stocks at the absolute bottom just to pay the debt.
So the spreadsheet completely ignores the emotional cost of the strategy.
Exactly. The best financial strategy isn't the one with the highest mathematical return. It's the one you can actually stick to when the world is burning down around you.
Adherence matters more than optimization.
Yes. If paying off the house helps you sleep, do it.
Speaking of the world burning down, Housel ends with this fascinating idea of the seduction of pessimism. Why are we so drawn to bad news in finance?
It's evolutionary. Optimism always sounds like a sales pitch. If I tell you, hey, the economy's going to grow slowly and steadily over the next 10 years, you just tune out. It sounds naive.
Right.
But if I tell you There is a massive crash coming next month that will wipe out your entire 401k. You stop everything and listen to me.
Because it sounds like you're trying to help me. You sound like the smarter person in the room.
Pessimism sounds like someone offering you a shield. Optimism sounds like someone selling you a bridge. Plus, destruction happens incredibly fast. A market crash happens in days.
Yeah.
Growth happens slowly over decades. So the crash feels way more urgent and important, even though historically, optimism is the far better bet.
We are just hardwired to look for the tiger hiding in the bushes.
We are. But in investing, that survival instinct can cost you a fortune if it keeps you permanently on the sidelines. The historical trend of the global markets is up and to the right, despite all the wars, pandemics, and recessions.
All right, we have covered a massive amount of ground here. The humble janitor versus the Harvard executive, the deep difference between being rich and being wealthy, the power of compounding and just surviving long enough to let it work.
If I had to summarize it all, I'd say this. Manage your money in a way that helps you sleep at night. Increase your time horizon. Start thinking in decades, not days. And use your money to buy freedom, not status.
And always remember that alien circling Earth analogy Housel uses at the end.
Right. If an alien looked at our economy from space, they would see the factories, the technology, the shipping lanes. They would see all the raw data. They would think everything makes logical sense. But they wouldn't understand why the markets violently crash or suddenly boom.
Because they wouldn't understand the stories going on inside our heads.
Exactly. They wouldn't see the fear, the greed, the hope, or the ego. And that is what actually moves the needle. The math is easy. The story is hard.
So here is a final thought for you to take with you today. Go look at the last big financial decision you made.
Think about it closely.
Maybe it was buying a house. Maybe it was panic selling a stock. Maybe it was taking a new job. Ask yourself, did you make that decision because it was the best math? Or did you make it because it told the best story about who you are?
That is the ultimate question.
Thanks for diving in with us, legends. We will see you tomorrow for the next book. Keep learning.